My husband told me he and my daughter were spending Christmas in Aspen with his ex-wife because her son needed a real black father figure. He looked me dead in the eye over the Thanksgiving turkey I paid for and told me to divorce him if I did not like it. I did not scream or argue. I just smiled, cleared my plate, and took the Tokyo transfer I had turned down for 3 years. 1 week later, he came home to empty closets and locked doors, calling me in an absolute panic. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to teach a toxic partner that your silence is not submission, but a calculated exit strategy. My name is Zuri. I am 35 years old, and I work as the Vice President of Global Logistics for a major international shipping firm. I built my career from the ground up, working 80-hour weeks and sacrificing sleep to ensure my family never had to worry about a single bill. My husband Andre is 38 and likes to call himself an entrepreneur. In reality, he is a man who relies completely on my income to fund his lifestyle while constantly trying to tear me down to make himself feel bigger. His business ventures have been nothing but a series of expensive failures that I have quietly bailed out month after month. We have a 13-year-old daughter named Kayla, who means the absolute world to me. I thought providing a beautiful home in the luxury Atlanta suburb and funding a comfortable life was enough to keep my family stable. I was incredibly wrong. The realization hit me on Thanksgiving evening. I had spent the entire Wednesday night and Thursday morning preparing a flawless dinner. I roasted the turkey, baked the macaroni and cheese from scratch, and set our custom dining table with the expensive porcelain plates I imported from Italy. The house smelled of cinnamon and sage. Everything looked picture perfect from the outside. Sitting around my table were Andre, our daughter Kayla, my brother-in-law Trey, and Trey's white wife Chloe. We were just finishing dessert when Andre tapped his crystal wine glass with his fork. He had that arrogant smirk on his face, the one he always wore when he was about to say something deliberately cruel disguised as a practical decision. He leaned back in his custom leather chair and announced that he had just booked non-refundable tickets for him and Kayla to spend the upcoming Christmas holidays in Aspen. But they were not going alone. They were going with his ex-wife Chantel and her new wealthy boyfriend. I sat frozen holding my dessert spoon. Chantel is 36 and has made it her life mission to compete with me, despite the fact that Andre left her years ago. She constantly demands money from Andre, which ultimately comes from my bank account, and uses her son as leverage to maintain a constant presence in our lives. She buys designer bags while claiming she cannot afford groceries, knowing Andre will run to me for the cash. Andre did not even look apologetic. He looked straight at me and said, "Chantel's son needs a real black father figure around the holidays. Her new guy is always busy, and you are always working anyway, Zuri. It just makes sense for Kayla to spend the holidays with a blended family that actually acts like a family. If you do not like it, you can divorce me." The sheer audacity of his words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. He was openly telling me he was taking our daughter on a luxury ski trip funded by my credit cards to play house with his ex-wife, and he dared me to do something about it. I looked at Kayla, who was staring down at her plate, looking deeply uncomfortable. She knew this was wrong, but at 13 she was too young to intervene in her parents' toxic dynamic. She had been conditioned to accept her father's chaotic decisions as normal. Before I could even process the disrespect, Chloe decided to chime in. Chloe is 32 and constantly tries to perform allyship while eagerly inserting herself into our family business. She took a long sip of the expensive wine I had purchased and offered a condescending smile. "Honestly, Zuri," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, "blended families are the future. You need to be less rigid and embrace the culture. Chantel is family now. You should be happy Andre is stepping up for her son." I slowly turned my gaze to Chloe. This woman was sitting in a house I paid for, drinking wine I bought, and wearing a designer dress purchased with money her husband Trey had borrowed from me and never repaid. Trey, who is 39, just sat there nodding along with his wife, completely blind to her manipulation and completely enabling his brother's disrespect. Trey had always been the type to let others do the heavy lifting while he reaped the rewards, and Chloe fit perfectly into that dynamic. I knew for a fact she was hiding her own financial secrets, but I had always kept my mouth shut for the sake of keeping the peace. I realized right then that I was entirely alone at a table I had bought and paid for. I was funding the lives of people who actively conspired to make me feel small. Andre thought he had me trapped. He thought that because I valued our family image and loved our daughter, I would just swallow my pride and write the check for Aspen. He assumed my demanding job made me a neglectful mother, and that he could use my dedication to providing for us as a weapon against me. I wanted to punish me for being successful, for making more money than him, for refusing to shrink myself so he could feel like a traditional provider. I felt a profound shift happen inside my chest. I did not feel the urge to cry. I did not want to throw my glass of wine at him even though he desperately deserved it. I simply felt an icy, absolute clarity. The years of suppressing my own needs, of making excuses for his fragile ego, of trying to be the perfect wife and provider, all of it dissolved in an instant. I looked at the beautiful dining room around me. I looked at the people who were eagerly waiting for me to break down or throw a tantrum so they could call me the angry, bitter wife. Instead, I placed my napkin neatly beside my plate. I stood up, picking up my dishes with steady hands. I looked directly at Andre and offered a warm, calm smile. "Have a wonderful trip," I said smoothly. "I hope the snow in Aspen is beautiful this year." Andre blinked, his smirk faltering for a fraction of a second. He was confused by my lack of resistance. Chloe exchanged a puzzled look with Trey. They were prepared for a fight. They were ready to gaslight me into feeling unreasonable. By refusing to engage, I had taken away their power. I simply turned and walked into the kitchen, leaving them sitting in the quiet confusion of their own making. That night, the house was quiet. Andre was fast asleep in our master bedroom, snoring softly, utterly convinced he had won. He genuinely believed he had put me in my place, and that tomorrow I would wake up and pay off whatever credit card balance he had racked up booking those Aspen tickets. He had no idea he had just handed me the keys to my own freedom. I slipped out of bed and wrapped my silk robe around my shoulders. I walked down the hall listening to the steady rhythm of the house I had worked so hard to maintain. I walked into my home office and locked the door behind me. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, the soft glow of the screen illuminating the dark room. For years, my mentor Valerie, who is the regional president at my logistics firm, had been begging me to accept a massive promotion. The position was the vice president of global logistics, based out of our headquarters in Tokyo, Japan. It came with a massive salary increase, a luxury corporate penthouse, and complete autonomy over international operations. I had turned the Tokyo transfer down 3 times. I had stayed in Atlanta because Andre complained that moving to Asia would ruin his local business networking. I had stayed because I wanted Kayla to be near her extended family. I stayed because I thought I could hold this broken family together if I just sacrificed a little more of myself. I had compromised my own potential to protect a man who was right now planning a luxury vacation with his ex-wife using my money. I opened my email and found the most recent offer Valerie had sent 2 weeks ago. I read through the generous terms, the relocation package, the executive benefits. Then I hit reply. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for only a moment before I began to type. "Valerie," I wrote. "That vice president position in Tokyo, is it still on the table? I will take it. Effective immediately. Let us begin the transition paperwork tomorrow morning." I pressed send. There was no going back. I was going to leverage my extensive background in logistics to systematically and silently dismantle my ties to this man. I owned our house through a premarital trust drafted by my best friend Kendra, who is a brilliant and ruthless family law attorney. My finances were the only thing keeping his businesses afloat. I was going to cut the life support, let him play Father of the Year in Aspen, and vanish across the globe. The war had just begun, and I had already mapped out every single phase of my victory. The morning after Thanksgiving felt entirely different from any day I had experienced in my 12 years of marriage. The usual heavy exhaustion that followed hosting my husband and his family was completely gone. In its place was a cold and calculating energy. When I walked into the kitchen at 6 in the morning, the house was still perfectly quiet. I poured myself a cup of black coffee and watched the sunrise through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the custom kitchen I had designed and paid for. Andre walked in 30 minutes later, wearing the silk pajamas I had bought him for his birthday. He had a triumphant bounce in his step. He poured his own coffee and leaned against the marble island, watching me with a smug expression. He genuinely believed that my silence the night before was a white flag of surrender. He thought he had successfully bullied me into accepting his luxury vacation with his ex-wife Chantel. "You should probably go ahead and upgrade the rental car for Aspen," he said, taking a slow sip of his coffee. "Chantel is bringing a lot of luggage and her son needs extra room for his snowboard gear. Just put it on the Platinum card and make sure it has four-wheel drive. I do not want Kayla being unsafe in the snow." I used our daughter as a shield for his audacity. He knew that mentioning Kayla's safety would normally make me rush to pull out my credit card. I looked at him, feeling absolutely nothing. The man standing in front of me was a parasite who had convinced himself he was the host. "I will make sure the transportation is handled," I replied, my voice completely smooth. Andre grinned, clearly satisfied with himself. He patted my shoulder as he walked past me. "Good. I am glad you are finally seeing reason, Zuri. It takes a strong woman to put her pride aside for the sake of the children." I watched him walk away, my pulse perfectly steady. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text message from Chantel. I opened it to find a link to a $2,000 designer ski jacket. The message beneath it read, "Andre said you are handling the incidentals for the trip. I need this in white. Tell the store to expedite the shipping so it arrives before we fly out. Thanks." I did not delete the message. I took a screenshot of it and saved it to a hidden folder on my phone. I simply replied with the word, "Noted." I knew that one word would make Chantel feel incredibly powerful. She loved the idea that she could command the successful corporate wife to buy her clothes. Let her enjoy the illusion for a few more weeks. Before I could even finish my coffee, the front door opened. Andre had given his brother Trey and his sister-in-law, Chloe, a key to our house years ago, despite my objections. Chloe walked into the kitchen, unannounced, wearing yoga pants and carrying an empty Tupperware container. She had come to raid my refrigerator for Thanksgiving leftovers. Chloe set her container on the island and gave me a look of exaggerated pity. "Morning, Zuri. I just wanted to check on you after last night. I know Andrea's decision was a lot to process, but you really handled it well." I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make her shift her weight uncomfortably. "I am perfectly fine, Chloe." She offered a condescending smile, tossing her blonde hair over her shoulder. "You know, it really is beautiful that Andre is willing to be a father figure to Chantel's son. Black boys need that kind of strong male guidance. And you are always so busy with your corporate job. It is good that you are learning to step back and let the family heal. You just have to realize that you cannot control everything with your money, Suri. Sometimes you have to let the man lead." I stared at the designer handbag hanging from her shoulder. It was a bag she had purchased right after her husband Trey asked me for a $50,000 loan to save his failing landscaping business. I had given Trey the money to protect the family name. 2 days later, Chloe was posting photos of her new luxury purchases on social media. I had always handled the financial accounting for Trey's business because he was completely incompetent with numbers. Lately, I had noticed several glaring discrepancies in those accounts. Chloe had been quietly siphoning money from her husband's business into a private account. She thought I was too busy with my own global logistics job to notice the missing funds. She was entirely wrong. "I will keep your advice in mind, Chloe," I said, maintaining a polite and detached tone. "Enjoy the leftovers." I left her standing in my kitchen and went upstairs to get dressed. I put on a sharp tailored suit, grabbed my briefcase, and walked out the door under the guise of running Black Friday errands. Instead of going to the mall, I drove straight to the downtown law office of my best friend Kendra. Kendra was waiting for me in her private conference room. She had been my closest friend since our undergraduate days, and she was a ruthless family law attorney. When I sat down and told her exactly what happened at the Thanksgiving table, Kendra did not offer me sympathy. She offered me a strategy. "He wants to play the big provider on your dime." Kendra said, her eyes flashing with a predatory legal focus. "Let him. But we are cutting the safety net today." Kendra pulled out the heavy files containing my premarital trust. Before I married Andre, I had insisted on a strict trust agreement that kept my primary assets completely separate. The house in the luxury suburb belonged entirely to a holding company controlled by my trust. Andre had no legal claim to the property, but he loved to parade around the neighborhood acting like he owned the place. I am transferring to Tokyo Kendra, I said. The promotion is official. I leave the same day Andre and Kayla fly to Aspen. I need the house secured, and I need my finances completely isolated by the time he lands in Colorado. Kendra smiled a sharp, terrifying smile. We will transfer the deed of the house to a corporate rental management agency today. As soon as you are in the air, they will change the locks and prepare the property for executive leasing. As for the finances, we will quietly remove your name as the guarantor from all of his business credit cards. It takes a few days for the banks to process the removal and update the limits. Right now, those cards have a $50,000 limit because your income guarantees them. Once you are removed, his limit will drop to exactly what his own income can support, which is absolutely nothing. What about Kayla? I asked the only real vulnerability in my plan. He is taking her across the country. Kendra leaned forward, tapping her pen on the mahogany table. He is legally her father, and there is no active custody agreement preventing him from taking her on a scheduled holiday trip. If you try to stop him from taking her right now, he will file an emergency injunction and claim you are a controlling mother trying to alienate him from his daughter. He will use it to demand spousal support. Let him take her to Aspen. Aspen is a heavily populated luxury resort, not a remote wilderness. You let him show her exactly who he is when your money is not there to cushion his failures. We will extract her the moment he drops the ball. I trusted Kendra implicitly. We spent the next 4 hours signing documents, redirecting direct deposits, and initiating the ghost protocol that would erase my financial presence from Andrea's life. When I walked out of her office, I felt like a phantom, a woman moving through a world she was about to leave behind entirely. When I returned home that afternoon, the house was empty. Andre had taken Trey out to the driving range. I walked up to Kayla's bedroom and knocked softly on the door. My 13-year-old daughter was sitting on the floor, surrounded by winter clothes, looking miserable. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Mom, I do not want to go to Aspen," she whispered. "I do not want to spend Christmas with Chantel. She is mean to you, and Dad acts weird when she is around. Why do I have to go?" I sat on the floor next to her and pulled her into a tight hug. I breathed in the scent of her coconut shampoo, feeling a fierce protective instinct rise in my chest. "You are going because your father wants to spend the holidays with you, and I have to travel for work," I said, keeping my voice steady and reassuring. "It is only for a little while." "But you always make Christmas special," Kayla argued, wiping her eyes. "Dad just throws money at things and gets mad when it is not perfect." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, sleek smartphone. I had purchased it with cash earlier that morning, using a prepaid cellular plan that could not be traced or shut off by anyone but me. I placed it in Kayla's hand and folded her fingers over it. "Listen to me very carefully," I said, looking directly into her brown eyes. "This phone is just for you and me. Do not tell your father about it. Do not tell your friends. Keep it in the hidden zipper pocket of your backpack. I am going to be far away on a very important business trip, but my phone will be on every single second of the day. If you ever feel unsafe, if you ever feel scared, or if your father leaves you alone to deal with Chantel, you call me. I do not care what time it is. I will answer and I will handle it. Do you understand me?" Kayla gripped the phone tightly, her expression shifting from sadness to serious understanding. She knew our family dynamic was broken, even if she did not have the vocabulary to explain it. She knew her father was unreliable, and she knew I was the one who always caught them when they fell. She nodded, hiding the phone securely in her bag. "I understand, Mom." I spent the next 3 weeks operating in complete stealth. To Andre and his family, I played the role of the defeated corporate wife. I nodded when Andre bragged about the luxury chalet he had booked in Aspen. I said nothing when Chloe made passive-aggressive remarks about my intense work schedule. Every time Andre handed me a bill for the upcoming trip, I simply placed it in a folder on my desk. In reality, my logistics team was already executing my international move. I spent my days at the office coordinating with my Tokyo counterparts, securing an executive penthouse in the Shibuya district and finalizing the shipping containers that would carry my most precious belongings across the ocean. I moved like a shadow, smiling at the people who were eagerly waiting for my downfall, while quietly removing the ground from beneath their feet. The morning of their departure was chaotic. Andre was running around the house shouting at Kayla to hurry up and demanding to know where his expensive ski boots were. I stood by the kitchen island sipping coffee and watching the performance. He did not ask how my business trip would be. He did not ask when I would be back. He simply grabbed his custom luggage and threw a yellow sticky note on the kitchen counter. "Pay the electric bill," the note read. "And make sure the cleaners come on Tuesday." He walked out the door without looking back. Kayla lingered for a moment, giving me a fierce hug before following him to the waiting luxury transport car. I stood in the doorway and watched the vehicle disappear down the tree-lined street. As soon as they were out of sight, I pulled out my phone and called Valerie, my regional president. "The packages are in the air," I said, looking around the empty house. "I am heading to the airport now. I will see you in Tokyo tomorrow." I picked up my single tailored suitcase and walked out the front door, locking it behind me. The corporate leasing agents would arrive in exactly 1 hour to change the locks and stage the property for its new executive tenants. I got into my waiting car and headed to the international terminal, leaving the ruins of my marriage behind me. The storm was coming for Andre, and he did not even have an umbrella. The 14-hour first-class flight to Tokyo felt like a profound rebirth. I drank expensive champagne and slept soundly for the first time in over a decade. I did not toss and turn worrying about Andre's failed business ventures. I did not wake up in a cold sweat over Chloe's manipulative spending habits. When I landed in Japan, the air felt entirely different. My company had arranged a luxury corporate vehicle to pick me up, and I was immediately swept away into the vibrant neon-lit streets of the city. My new residence was an immaculate executive penthouse in the heart of the Shibuya district. Walking into that penthouse was a revelation. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking panoramic view of the Tokyo skyline and Mount Fuji in the distance. The shipping containers holding my personal items had arrived seamlessly thanks to my logistics team. My tailored designer suits hung perfectly in the expansive walk-in closet. My grandmother's vintage jewelry sat safely in the wall safe. The space was entirely mine, untouched by Andre's chaotic vanity or Chloe's passive-aggressive jealousy. There was no trace of the heavy, suffocating disrespect I had endured for years in Atlanta. For the next week, I focused entirely on establishing my new empire. I walked into the regional headquarters and immediately took command of the global logistics division. My mentor Valerie was thrilled to have me leading the team, and the Japanese executives respected my fierce work ethic and sharp business acumen. I threw myself into complex supply chain strategies and international shipping negotiations. I commanded boardrooms filled with people who valued my intellect, rather than viewing my success as a threat to their fragile egos. I spent my evenings exploring the city, eating incredible food, and embracing a profound sense of peace. There were no arguments over missing funds. There were no late-night calls from bill collectors looking for my husband. I was a 35-year-old black woman at the absolute peak of her career, sitting on top of the world. I had surgically removed the dead weight from my life, and I felt utterly invincible. But I knew the storm was brewing back in the States. I knew the exact timeline of the financial trap Kendra and I had set. The bank processes would be finalizing. The credit limits would be updating. I just had to wait for the detonation. Exactly 7 days after I arrived in Japan, the peace was finally shattered. I was sitting on the private balcony of my penthouse, wrapped in a silk robe and sipping a warm cup of matcha green tea. I was watching the sunrise, the Tokyo skyline in brilliant shades of gold and pink. It was a Tuesday morning for me, but it was still Monday evening back in Aspen. My new secure smartphone, the one that only my daughter and my lawyer had the number for, began to vibrate on the glass coffee table. I picked it up and saw an unknown Colorado area code flashing on the screen. The caller had attempted to reach me 47 times in the span of an hour. I knew exactly who it was. Andre must have begged someone to let him use their phone after realizing his own service had been shut off by my carrier. I let the phone ring out and waited for the voicemail notification to appear. I pressed play and brought the speaker to my ear, holding my warm tea in my other hand. Andre's voice exploded through the speaker, panicked, breathless, and completely unhinged. You could hear the sheer terror vibrating in his throat. "Zuri, where the hell are you?" he shouted over the sound of wind and bustling resort noise. "I have been calling your phone for days, and it goes straight to a disconnected message. I called your office and they said you do not work in Atlanta anymore. What is going on? We came back from the slopes and all my business credit cards are declining." The front desk just humiliated me in front of Chantel and the whole lobby. I took a slow sip of my matcha, listening to the beautiful sound of a man realizing his entire reality was a fabricated illusion. He was gasping for air, pacing around whatever corner he had found to hide in. In the background, I could faintly hear a woman screaming. It sounded exactly like Chantel throwing one of her famous tantrums. "Zuri, you need to call the bank right now," Andre begged, his voice cracking with desperation, abandoning all his previous arrogant bravado. "They are telling me my spending limit is 0. I told them there must be a mistake because my wife makes 6 figures. But they laughed at me. We tried to go back to the house to get some other cards, but my brother Trey drove by and said there is a corporate leasing sign in the front yard and the locks are changed. You need to fix this, Zuri." He paused to take a ragged breath, the panic escalating to a fever pitch. Chantel's new wealthy boyfriend is a fraud. He just ditched her at the lodge and took off. He left us stuck with a $15,000 luxury resort bill. They locked our luggage in the rooms, and they are threatening to call the police if I do not provide a valid card in the next 10 minutes. Chantel is screaming at me, and I do not have a single dollar to my name. Call me back immediately. The voicemail ended with a frantic click. I looked out over the sprawling, beautiful city of Tokyo as the morning light washed over the buildings. Andre had demanded a divorce if I did not support his decision to play a wealthy father figure for another woman's child on my dime. He had told me to know my place. He wanted to be the man of the house. Now he had a $15,000 bill, an angry ex-wife, and absolutely no safety net to catch his fall. I set my phone down on the table, finished my tea, and smiled at the rising sun. He was finally getting exactly what he asked for. I set my empty teacup down on the glass table and picked up the secure phone. The screen was still glowing with the notification of the frantic voicemail. The air in my Tokyo penthouse was perfectly still and climate-controlled, a stark contrast to the freezing, chaotic mess my husband had just described. I took a deep breath, letting the reality of my absolute power wash over me. For 12 years, I had rushed to fix every single mistake Andre made. I had smoothed over his financial blunders, paid off his ridiculous debts, and shielded him from the consequences of his own arrogance. He had grown so accustomed to my safety net that he actually believed he was the one flying. I tapped the screen and dialed the Colorado number he had used to call me. He answered on the very first ring. The sound of howling wind and passing traffic immediately flooded the receiver. "Zuri," he shouted, his voice cracking with a mixture of rage and desperate relief. "Where the hell have you been? I have been stranded outside this hotel for 2 hours. The manager literally locked our luggage in a holding room. You need to call the front desk right now and authorize a wire transfer. They are saying the platinum card is dead. The business card is dead. Everything is declining. Stop playing these petty games and wire the money." His tone was incredible. Even freezing on a sidewalk in Aspen, completely destitute, he still tried to command me. He still thought he could bark an order and I would scramble to obey. I leaned back against the plush fabric of my balcony chair, looking out at the majestic silhouette of Mount Fuji. "I am not playing games, Andre," I said, my voice dropping to a smooth, icy register. "I am simply agreeing with you." "What are you talking about?" he yelled. The wind whipped across his microphone, making his voice distort. "Stop talking in riddles and transfer the funds. Chantel is inside screaming at the concierge and Kayla is freezing. I need $15,000 right now just to get our bags back and another $5,000 for the flights home." "You sat at my Thanksgiving table," I reminded him, pronouncing every word with deliberate precision. "You ate the food I paid for, you drank the wine I bought, and you looked me dead in the eye and told me that Chantel's son needed a real black father figure for the holidays. You told me that I was just the corporate worker who was always away, and that you were stepping up to lead your blended family. Zuri, please, he begged, the arrogance finally beginning to drain from his voice. This is not the time. It is the perfect time, I countered. You told me to divorce you if I did not like being put last. You thought I would scream and cry and beg for a seat at my own table. But I did not argue, Andre. I gave you exactly what you wanted. You wanted to be the big provider for another woman using my paycheck. Now my paycheck is gone. Listen to me, he pleaded, his breath ragged and heavy. The guy Chantel was seeing, he was a total fraud. He invited us up here and promised to cover the luxury suite. But his credit card bounced this morning, and he literally sneaked out the back door before sunrise. He left us with the entire resort bill. Chantel does not have a dime to her name. She expected me to cover it. She expected you to cover it. I let out a soft, dry laugh. The poetry of the situation was almost too perfect. Chantel had spent the last 3 weeks sending me links to $2,000 ski jackets, demanding I sponsor her winter wardrobe. She had paraded around Atlanta, bragging to anyone who would listen about her wealthy new boyfriend taking her and her son on a luxury vacation. In reality, she had found a scam artist who was just as broke as she was. They were two parasites trying to attach themselves to the same host, and when the host disappeared, they were left with nothing but each other. That sounds like a terrible situation for the man of the house to navigate. I said, my tone perfectly pleasant. But you are the father figure now, Andre. You wanted to lead, so lead. Figure it out. Zuri, wait. Do not you dare hang up on me. You cannot leave me out here. I pressed the end button, severing the connection. I immediately went into the phone settings and temporarily blocked the Colorado number. I did not want him calling back and disrupting my morning routine. I needed to get dressed for my first official day at the Tokyo Regional Headquarters. I walked into my expansive closet and selected a flawless tailored navy blue suit. As I buttoned my silk blouse and fastened my grandmother's vintage pearl earrings, I felt a profound sense of liberation. The heavy, suffocating anxiety that used to sit on my chest every single morning in Atlanta was completely gone. I no longer had to monitor checking accounts to see what unnecessary luxury item Andre had purchased. I no longer had to brace myself for the inevitable text messages from Chantel demanding child support advances. I was finally breathing my own air. I spent the next 8 hours completely immersed in my new role. The Tokyo executives were brilliant, and the supply chain challenges we discussed required my full intellectual focus. I commanded the boardroom, directing global shipping routes and negotiating international freight contracts. For the first time in years, I felt respected. I was not just a wallet to be drained. I was a leader. When I finally returned to my penthouse that evening, the sun had set, and the city was glowing with vibrant neon lights. I poured myself a glass of expensive red wine and sat on the velvet sofa. I unlocked the secret smartphone and checked my voicemail. The digital fallout was a beautiful symphony of destruction. By blocking the number, I had forced Andre to leave voicemails instead of calling continuously. There were 14 new messages, all from various numbers he had clearly borrowed from strangers or hotel staff. I played them in chronological order, listening to the rapid deterioration of his makeshift blended family. The first voicemail was left around noon Aspen time. Zuri, please pick up the phone. I am begging you. The hotel manager just threatened to call the police because Chantel tried to sneak into the holding room to steal her luggage back. They have our passports. They have our clothes. I had to beg a waiter to let us sit in the back of the lobby so we would not freeze. You have to fix this. I know I messed up. I know I disrespected you, but you cannot do this to me. I took a sip of my wine and pressed play on the next message. The tone had shifted drastically. The desperation was turning into vicious infighting. In the background of the second voicemail, I could clearly hear Chantel screaming. Her shrill voice echoed through the speaker, laced with absolute venom. Tell your rich wife to pay the damn bill. Andre, she shrieked, her voice distorted by the phone's microphone. You promised me this trip was covered. You told me she was handling the incidentals. You are a broke, pathetic excuse for a man. I should have never brought my son on this trip with a loser like you. I could hear Andre trying to shush her, his voice thick with humiliation. Chantel, shut up. People are staring at us. Zuri, I swear to God I will make this up to you. Just wire the money to the hotel directly. Do not even send it to me. Just pay the front desk so we can get our bags and get a flight home. I will do whatever you want. I will sign whatever you want. Please. The irony was astounding. Chantel was furious that Andre could not provide for her, while simultaneously admitting she had expected my money to fund her luxury lifestyle. She despised me, but she felt entirely entitled to my paycheck. And Andre, the man who had sat at my Thanksgiving table and demanded a divorce if I did not submit to his authority, was now reduced to begging me to save him from the woman he had chosen over me. The voicemails continued escalating in severity. By the eighth message, the situation had devolved into a public spectacle. Zuri, the police are here, Andre whispered, his voice shaking with genuine fear. Chantel threw a hot coffee at the concierge because they told her she had to leave the lobby. They are writing her a citation for assault. She is blaming me for everything. She is telling the cops that I kidnapped her on false pretenses. They are asking for my identification, but my wallet is locked in the luggage room. You have to call the Aspen Police Department and verify who I am. I listened to the chaos unfolding thousands of miles away, feeling a deep, cold satisfaction. Kendra had been absolutely right. Letting him take the trip was the most brilliant legal maneuver we could have executed. I did not have to lift a finger to destroy Andre's reputation or prove his incompetence. I just had to step out of his way and let him destroy himself. But as the voicemails played on, a sharp knot of anxiety began to form in my stomach. Through all the screaming, all the financial panic, and all the police involvement, there was one voice I had not heard. Kayla. My 13-year-old daughter was trapped in the middle of this toxic implosion. She was watching her father be humiliated. She was watching Chantel throw a violent tantrum in a luxury resort lobby. I knew my daughter. I knew how much she absorbed and how deeply she felt the tension around her. I had allowed Andre to take her because intervening legally beforehand would have triggered a massive custody battle that Kendra warned could drag on for years. But knowing she was sitting in a freezing lobby, watching the two adults who were supposed to be supervising her get questioned by the police, made my maternal instincts flare with a fierce, burning intensity. The final voicemail brought my anxiety to a boiling point. It was not Andre's voice. It was Chantel. She had clearly snatched the phone out of his hand. "You think you are so smart," Zuri Chantel hissed into the receiver, her words slurred with rage. "You think you can strand us out here and play the victim? Your husband is a joke. He has been using your money to pay off my car note for 2 years, and you did not even know it. You are nothing but a walking bank account, and the second I get back to Atlanta, I am taking everything he has left." The message clicked off. I stared at the phone, my jaw clenched tight. I was not surprised by the financial revelation. Kendra had already uncovered the hidden accounts Andre used to funnel my money to Chantel. But hearing her brazenly admit it while my daughter was stranded in a snowstorm shifted my mindset from calculated patience to immediate aggressive action. I had let them fail. I had let them expose their true colors to the world and to the authorities. Now it was time to extract my daughter and drop the legal hammer on every single person who had participated in this circus. I was already opening my laptop to initiate the extraction protocol when my personal phone buzzed on the glass coffee table. It was a text message, but not from Andre. The name flashing on the screen made my blood run instantly cold. Chloe. Chloe was the kind of woman who read one book on anti-racism and suddenly believed she was the ultimate authority on the Black experience. She loved to insert herself into our family dynamics, playing the role of the enlightened peacemaker while secretly looking down on all of us. She weaponized therapy speak to mask her constant condescension, and she treated my brother-in-law Trey like an accessory rather than a husband. She had always resented my success because it contradicted the savior narrative she so desperately wanted to play in our family. I opened the message. The sheer audacity of her words practically vibrated off the screen. "You abandoned your Black daughter in the snow for a job." Chloe wrote her text dripping with artificial moral outrage. "Andre just called me in tears and told me everything. You are a disgrace to motherhood, Zuri. Real mothers do not run away to Asia when their family needs them. You are a cold, selfish woman, and I am telling Trey exactly what kind of person you really are. You need to wire Andre that money right now, or I am taking this public." I stared at the message, feeling a dark, powerful amusement settle over me. She was trying to play the righteous advocate for my black daughter while actively stealing from her own black husband. The hypocrisy was breathtaking, but it was exactly the opening I needed to eliminate her from my life permanently. I did not type a furious paragraph back to her. I did not justify my maternal choices to a woman who had never worked a hard day in her life and who funded her designer wardrobe with stolen money. Instead, I opened the encrypted digital drive that Kendra had sent me 2 days ago. Trey ran a landscaping and property management business that I had bailed out with a $50,000 loan 3 years ago. When his business started failing again, Trey blamed the economy. But I knew better. I had asked Kendra to put a forensic accountant on Trey's business ledgers during my financial separation process, just to ensure none of Andre's debts were tied up in his brother's failing company. What the accountant found was a masterpiece of marital betrayal. Chloe handled all the bookkeeping for Trey. She had convinced him that managing the numbers was her way of supporting his entrepreneurial dreams. Trey blindly trusted her and defended her fiercely whenever anyone suggested they hire an outside accountant. But Chloe had been clever. She created 3 shell companies with names that sounded perfectly like legitimate landscaping suppliers. She generated fake monthly invoices for bulk topsoil fertilizer and heavy machinery rentals that never actually existed. Every single Friday, Chloe authorized payments from Trey's business account to these ghost vendors. The money was routed through a holding account and deposited directly into her parents' personal bank account in Florida. Her family had quietly filed for bankruptcy last year, and Chloe had been systematically draining her husband's livelihood to secretly bail out her parents. She had stolen exactly $82,000 from a man who loved her completely. I took a screenshot of Chloe's self-righteous text message. Then I opened a new email addressed directly to Trey. I attached the screenshot of her text first, so he could see exactly how his wife spoke to the woman who had funded his entire life. Then I attached the 60-page forensic financial audit. The document included bank routing numbers, fake invoice copies, and direct traces to her parents' accounts in Florida. It was irrefutable, legally binding proof of severe embezzlement. I typed a single devastating paragraph to my brother-in-law. Trey, your wife is deeply concerned about family values and loyalty today. I thought you should see exactly how she honors ours. I suggest you look at page 4 of the attached audit. She has stolen $82,000 from your business to pay off her parents' bankruptcy. Audit your accounts immediately. Have a wonderful holiday. I pressed send. I did not wait for a reply. I immediately went into my phone settings and blocked Chloe completely. She was about to experience a catastrophic implosion of her own making, and I had zero interest in being a spectator to her tears. Her glass house was about to shatter into a million pieces. I closed my laptop, feeling the immense satisfaction of tying up another loose end. But I did not have time to bask in the glow of Chloe's impending downfall. The secret prepaid phone sitting on my desk suddenly began to ring. It was a bright, urgent chime that I had programmed for exactly one contact. My heart slammed against my ribs. The cold, calculating corporate strategist vanished in an instant, replaced entirely by a mother operating on pure adrenaline. I snatched the phone off the desk before the second ring even finished. Kayla, I said, my voice instantly softening but laced with fierce urgency. Are you safe? Where are you? Mom, her voice was trembling, thick with tears and absolute panic. Mom, I am so scared. I closed my eyes, fighting the physical wave of anger that washed over me at the sound of my child crying. Take a deep breath, baby, I said, gripping the phone tightly. Tell me exactly what is happening. The police came, Kayla sobbed. I could hear the bustling echo of a large room through the speaker. I heard strangers talking loudly and the heavy clanking of ski boots on hardwood floors. Chantel got really mad because the hotel locked our bags away. She was yelling at the lady behind the front desk, and she threw a hot cup of coffee at the wall. The security guards came and told us we were formally evicted. Dad got so mad at her, but she just kept screaming that he was broke and useless. Where is your father right now, Kayla? I demanded, pacing across the hardwood floor of my penthouse. He and Chantel went into the manager's back office to scream at them, Kayla cried, her breath hitching. The police officers went in there with them. Dad told me to just sit out here in the lobby with my backpack and not to move. People are staring at me, Mom. Everyone is pointing and whispering. He left me out here all alone. I do not know what to do. Andre had crossed the ultimate unforgivable line. He had abandoned our 13-year-old daughter in a public space surrounded by strangers in the middle of a legal crisis that he had entirely created. He was more focused on fighting with his bitter ex-wife and saving his own fragile ego than protecting his child. "Listen to me, Kayla," I said, speaking slowly and deliberately, so my absolute certainty would anchor her. "You are going to be fine. Do not move from that spot. Do not go looking for your father. I am extracting you right now." I walked over to my desk and pulled up my Global Logistics Network dashboard. I had executive contacts in every major city in the world, including elite private transportation services that catered to high-net-worth individuals. "I am sending a private executive security car for you, right this second," I told her, tapping rapidly on my keyboard to initiate the dispatch protocol. "The driver will walk directly into that lobby. He will be wearing a black suit, and he will be holding an electronic tablet with your name on it. You get in that car, Kayla, and you do not look back. You do not tell your father where you are going. You just leave." Kayla sniffled, taking a shaky, reassuring breath. Her panic was beginning to subside, replaced by her absolute trust in me. "Where is the car taking me, Mom?" she asked, her voice tiny but hopeful. I looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse at the brilliant neon lights of the Tokyo skyline. I smiled a fierce, predatory smile. "It is taking you to the airport, baby," I said. "You are coming to Japan." I kept the secure phone pressed tightly to my ear while my fingers flew across the keyboard of my laptop. The panoramic view of Tokyo outside my penthouse window faded into the background. Right now, the only thing that mattered was the terrified 13-year-old girl sitting in a chaotic hotel lobby thousands of miles away. "Kayla, I need you to listen to my voice," I said, keeping my tone incredibly steady and calm. "You are going to be completely fine. I am tracking a vehicle that is exactly 5 minutes away from the main entrance of your resort." "Mom, it is getting really loud out here," Kayla whispered, her voice trembling. "Chantel is screaming at the security guards. She is telling them that Dad is a broke fraud and Dad is yelling at the manager to give him his luggage back. People are taking videos on their phones. I am just sitting on my backpack trying not to look at anyone." "You are doing a perfect job, baby," I told her. My heart was pounding against my ribs, but I channeled every ounce of my corporate logistics training into this single moment. As the vice president of global logistics, I moved millions of dollars in freight across international borders every single day. Extracting one precious girl from a ski resort was just a matter of deploying the right resources. I had bypassed regular taxi services and gone straight to a private executive security firm my company used to transport high-profile clients. I authorized a premium wire transfer paying triple the standard rate for an immediate emergency pickup. "Okay, Kayla, the driver is pulling up right now," I said, watching the GPS tracker on my screen. It is a black luxury SUV. The driver is a tall man wearing a dark gray suit. His name is David. I want you to stand up, put your backpack on, and walk straight toward the front sliding doors. Do not look back at your father. Do not say a word to anyone. I heard the rustle of her heavy winter coat as she stood up. "Okay, Mom, I see him," she said, her breath hitching slightly. "He has a digital tablet with my name on it. Walk right up to him," I instructed. "When he asks for the security phrase, you tell him the word is Horizon." I listened with bated breath as my daughter navigated the crowded, chaotic lobby. I heard the faint, ambient noise of angry shouting in the background, confirming that Andre was still completely distracted by his own miserable choices. Then I heard a man speak in a polite, professional tone. "Miss Kayla?" he asked. "Horizon," she replied, her voice small but brave. "Right this way, miss," the driver said. I heard the heavy electronic sliding doors of the resort open and close. The chaotic noise of the lobby was instantly severed, replaced by the muffled howling of the aspen wind. A few seconds later, I heard the solid, reassuring thud of a heavy car door closing. The complete silence inside the soundproof vehicle was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. "Mom, I am in the car," Kayla said, letting out a massive, shaky sigh of relief. "It is warm in here." He gave me a blanket and a bottle of water. I closed my eyes and let my head drop back against my leather desk chair. A single tear of pure, overwhelming relief slipped down my cheek. "You did so good, baby," I told her. "You are completely safe now. David is going to drive you directly to the Denver International Airport. I have already purchased your ticket. You are flying first class on a direct flight to Tokyo. You will have priority lounge access and a private escort to the gate. You are coming to me." "I am coming to Japan," she asked, a tiny spark of excitement finally breaking through her fear. "You are coming to Japan," I confirmed. "Rest now. Keep the phone charged and call me when you reach the airport. I love you so much." "I love you too, Mom." I ended the call and took a deep, stabilizing breath. The extraction was successful. My daughter was secured and moving rapidly away from the disaster zone. Now it was time to deal with the fallout. It took Andre exactly 42 minutes to realize his daughter was missing. He had been so utterly consumed with fighting the resort manager, arguing with the police, and trading vicious insults with Chantel that he had completely forgotten he brought a child on this trip. I knew the exact moment he realized she was gone because my corporate work phone, which was the only number he had not been blocked on, began to ring. I ignored it. He called 3 more times in rapid succession. I ignored those too. Let him sweat. Let him feel a fraction of the sheer terror he had put my daughter through by abandoning her in that lobby. 10 minutes later, my work phone rang again, but this time the caller ID displayed an official number from the Aspen Police Department. I answered it on the first ring, projecting absolute authority. "This is Zuri," I said smoothly. "Ma'am, this is Officer Harrison with the Aspen Police Department." The man said, his tone serious and urgent. "We have your husband Andre here. He is reporting that your 13-year-old daughter Kayla has been abducted from the resort lobby. He is highly agitated and claiming that you might be involved in a parental kidnapping across state lines." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my desk. "Officer Harrison, I appreciate your call, but there has been no kidnapping." I said, my voice perfectly calm and measured. "I am her biological mother, and I share full legal custody of my daughter. My husband abandoned her in a public hotel lobby while he was engaged in a domestic dispute with his ex-wife. He left a minor completely unsupervised while he was being cited by your department for a public disturbance." The officer went quiet for a moment, clearly processing the fact that I knew exactly what was happening on his end. "Because I am a responsible parent who actually monitors her child. I arranged for a licensed and bonded private executive transport service to safely remove my daughter from that hostile environment," I continued. "She is currently en route to the airport and she is perfectly safe. My husband is simply trying to weaponize your police department to cover up his own gross negligence. You can inform him that his daughter is secure and that my legal counsel will be handling all future communications regarding this matter." I see, the officer said, his tone shifting from suspicion to professional understanding. He clearly did not want to be caught in the middle of a messy domestic dispute, especially when the mother had legally secured her own child from a chaotic scene. "Thank you for clarifying, ma'am. I will inform him that the child is safe and in your custody." I hung up the phone and smiled. Andre had tried to play the terrified victim. He had tried to frame me as a bitter runaway wife who stole his child out of spite. He thought he could use the police to force me to return Kayla to him, so he could maintain his illusion of control. He failed spectacularly. But Andre was nothing if not persistent in his delusions. When he realized the police were not going to arrest me and fetch his daughter, he pivoted immediately to the only other weapon he had left: public manipulation. Less than an hour after the police left the resort, Andre took out his phone and walked out into the falling snow. He positioned himself so the luxury ski lodge was visible in the background, framing the perfect tragic shot. He hit record and posted a live video directly to his social media accounts. My team back in Atlanta flagged the video within minutes and forwarded the link to my secure laptop. I sat in my Tokyo penthouse and watched my husband put on the performance of a lifetime. He looked directly into the camera, his eyes wide and pleading. He had even managed to squeeze out a few convincing tears. "I never thought I would have to make a video like this." He started, his voice cracking with artificial heartbreak. "But my wife Zuri has completely lost her mind. She abandoned our family right before the holidays because she cares more about her corporate job in Asia than she does about her own husband. I brought my daughter on a beautiful ski trip to spend time with her extended blended family, and Zuri just cut off all our finances out of pure spite. She left us stranded in the freezing cold. He paused, wiping a fake tear from his cheek, playing the broken black father to absolute perfection. And then, while I was trying to figure out how to get us home, she sent some shady private car to take my daughter away from me without my permission. She kidnapped my little girl because she is bitter that I want to foster a loving blended family. I am stuck here in the snow with nothing. She is trying to destroy me just because I want to be a real father. If anyone sees this, please share it. The world needs to know what kind of cold, heartless woman she really is. I watched the view count on the video climb rapidly. People love a tragedy, and they especially love a story that paints a successful, powerful black woman as a cold, unfeeling villain who destroys her family for a paycheck. The comments were already flooding in, thousands of strangers calling me a monster, demanding that I return the child and expressing deep sympathy for the poor stranded father. I thought he was brilliant. He thought that by controlling the public narrative, he could shame me into submission. He thought the pressure of a viral smear campaign would force me to wire him the money to save my own reputation. I slowly closed my laptop, the soft click echoing in the quiet penthouse. I was not angry. I was invigorated. Andre had just lit the match, but he had no idea he was standing in a room full of gasoline. He wanted a public spectacle. He wanted the whole world to watch our family business unfold on the internet. I picked up my phone and dialed my attorney, Kendra. She answered immediately, the sound of keyboard clicking in the background. "Did you see his little snow globe performance?" Kendra asked, her voice dripping with lethal anticipation. "I saw it," I replied. "He wants to play the victim on the world stage. It is time to oblige him. Let us proceed with phase 2. I will file the paperwork right now," Kendra said. "The child endangerment restraining order, the financial audit, and the divorce petition will hit the courts before he even thaws out." Andre thought he was directing a movie about a broken father fighting for his family. He was about to find out he was just a minor character in a documentary about his own absolute ruin. Andre really thought his little snowy performance was going to be the ultimate checkmate. He stood out there in the freezing Colorado air, holding his phone like a weapon, believing that the court of public opinion would force me into submission. He assumed that because the internet was feeling sorry for him, the actual legal system would simply follow suit. He expected the Aspen police to drag me back in handcuffs. Instead, the officers on the scene reviewed my custody documentation and the private security transport logs. They told my husband in no uncertain terms that no crime had been committed and that he needed to stop wasting their resources. But the absolute best part of my morning was knowing that my best friend Kendra was operating exactly 3 steps ahead of his fragile ego. While Andre was busy refreshing his social media notifications to see how many likes his sob story was getting, a local process server was already walking through the sliding glass doors of that luxury ski lodge. Andre was still arguing with the front desk manager when a man in a heavy winter coat approached him. The server asked him to confirm his name and then handed him a thick manila envelope. Inside that envelope was the legal equivalent of a tactical airstrike. Kendra had not just filed standard divorce papers. She had filed an emergency protective order requesting full legal and physical custody of our daughter, based on the undeniable fact that Andre had abandoned a minor in a public space during a hostile domestic dispute. The hotel security footage showing him leaving Kayla alone while he and his ex-wife screamed at the management was already being subpoenaed. But Kendra did not stop there. The envelope also contained a formal notice of a comprehensive forensic financial audit. We were legally demanding a full accounting of every single dollar he had spent over the last 5 years, including the money he had been secretly funneling to Chantel. When Andre read those papers, his entire manufactured reality crumbled. He was legally cornered, financially ruined, and stranded in the snow. But men like Andre do not take accountability when they fail. They double down. Desperate and completely broke, Andre did the only thing he knew how to do. He formed a toxic alliance with the 2 women who hated me just as much as he currently did. He joined forces with Chantel, and he made a frantic phone call to my white sister-in-law, Chloe. Chloe was absolutely seething. The financial receipts I had sent to my brother-in-law Trey had blown her comfortable little world wide open. Trey was finally asking questions about his missing business funds, and Chloe needed a distraction. She needed a villain to take the heat off her own embezzlement. So she eagerly jumped into Andre's messy drama, playing the role of the concerned, supportive family member. She loved the idea of tearing down a successful black woman to make herself look like the ultimate savior of a broken family. Chloe had always been obsessed with social media optics. She knew exactly how to manipulate the algorithm, and she knew exactly which buttons to push to outrage the public. Together, the three of them orchestrated a massive coordinated smear campaign aimed directly at my career and my reputation. Andre started posting multiple videos a day. Chloe helped him script them, ensuring he used all the right buzzwords. He painted the picture of a hard-working, devoted black father who was just trying to build a beautiful blended family. He claimed that my corporate ambition had turned me into a cold, bitter woman who resented his bond with his daughter. Chantel even made a guest appearance in one of the videos, wiping away fake tears and talking about how she had just wanted to give the children a magical Christmas in the mountains. Chloe amplified their posts across every social media platform she could reach. She shared his videos to parenting groups, corporate accountability forums, and local Atlanta community pages. She wrote long paragraphs about how heartbreaking it was to see a mother choose a paycheck over her own family. She intentionally fed into the stereotype of the aggressive, unfeeling career woman destroying the men around her. People who did not know me, people who had never a single day in my shoes, began leaving thousands of hateful comments. They called me a runaway mother. They tagged my corporate employer, demanding that I be fired for my lack of family values. They accused me of kidnapping my own child out of pure jealousy. It was a masterclass in manipulation. They were entirely broke, but they were rich in public sympathy. They wanted to create so much noise, so much external pressure, that I would be forced to break my silence and defend myself. They wanted me to engage in a public screaming match so they could point their fingers and call me unhinged. I refused to give them the satisfaction. I stayed completely silent on social media. I did not post a single statement. I focused all my energy on getting my daughter safely to Japan. When Kayla finally walked through the arrival gates at the Tokyo International Airport, my heart felt whole again. I held her so tightly, I thought I might never let her go. She was exhausted and slightly overwhelmed by the culture shock, but she was safe. I brought her to our new penthouse and let her sleep for 14 straight hours. The absolute relief on her face when she woke up and realized we were truly free from the constant chaos was worth every single sacrifice I had made. Over the next few days, I enrolled her in a prestigious international school and helped her decorate her new bedroom. We spent our evenings eating amazing food and looking out over the brilliant city lights. For the first time in her life, she was living in a home entirely free of shouting and manipulation. But the digital storm they had created back in the States was beginning to cross international waters. Reputation is everything. When you manage multi-million-dollar contracts, corporate partners want to know that the executives handling their accounts are stable and reliable. The viral videos were starting to show up on the radar of my international colleagues and competitors alike. I walked into the regional headquarters every morning with my head held high, projecting absolute confidence. I delivered flawless presentations and closed major shipping deals, but I could feel the subtle shift in the air. I noticed the quiet whispers in the break room and the lingering glances from the junior executives. The smear campaign was threatening the very foundation of the new life I had just secured. Andre knew exactly what he was doing. He knew that my company valued discretion and public relations above almost everything else. He figured that if he made enough noise, my employer would force me to resolve the issue to protect their brand. I was banking on the corporate machine to do his dirty work for him. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon in Tokyo when my desk phone rang. It was the executive assistant to Valerie, my mentor, and the regional president of the firm. She asked me to come up to the executive suite immediately. I smoothed my tailored suit jacket, took a deep breath, and took the private elevator to the top floor. When I walked into Valerie's massive corner office, she was standing by the window looking down at the busy street below. She did not offer her usual warm smile. Her expression was completely serious, layered with a sharp professional tension. "Please sit down," Valerie said, gesturing to the leather chair across from her desk. I sat, maintaining my perfect posture. "Is there a problem with the new freight contracts?" I asked, keeping my voice even and calm. "The freight contracts are flawless," Valerie replied. "The problem is your husband. I am currently navigating a complex divorce," I said carefully. "I assure you it will not impact my performance or this division." Valerie sighed and walked around her desk. "The board of directors saw the viral posts, Zuri. The entire executive committee is aware of the social media campaign being waged against you. We pride ourselves on maintaining a pristine public image, and right now your personal life is trending globally for all the wrong reasons." "I understand the optics are challenging," I started to say, but Valerie held up her hand to stop me. "It is no longer just optics, Zuri," she said, her voice dropping to a serious, urgent register. "It is a physical security issue. Your husband managed to secure an international flight." My blood ran completely cold. Andre did not have a dime to his name. His credit cards were shut off. His bank accounts were empty. The only way he could have afforded a last-minute international flight across the globe was if Chloe had given him the money she stole from Trey. They had pooled their stolen resources for one final desperate attack. "Hai is not just in Tokyo." Valerie continued, her eyes locked intensely on mine. "He is downstairs in our corporate lobby right now. He brought a local camera crew with him. He is demanding to see you, and he is live-streaming the entire thing to his followers online. The building security is holding him at the front desk, but he is making a massive scene." I sat perfectly still, absorbing the reality of the situation. Andre had crossed the ocean to corner me in my place of power. He wanted to ambush me in front of my bosses and force a public reconciliation or a public breakdown. Valerie leaned forward, resting her hands on the polished wood of her desk. "The board is watching this play out live," she said. "The security team is waiting for my authorization to handle the situation, but any physical altercation on camera will only feed his narrative. He knows our corporate policies. He knows we despise public scandals. He thinks he has backed us into a corner. What are you going to do?" I looked at Valerie, my expression entirely devoid of fear. I reached down and smoothed the lapels of my tailored navy suit. "I am going to do exactly what I was hired to do, Valerie. I am going to handle the logistics of a very messy delivery, and then I'm going to return it to sender." I paused, letting the weight of my confidence settle over the room. "Tell the board to keep watching. I promise you by the time I am finished, our corporate stock will not drop a single point. If anything, the public is about to see exactly how efficiently this company deals with external liabilities." Valerie stared at me for a long second, before a slow, sharp smile spread across her face. She stepped aside and gestured toward the heavy oak door. "The lobby is yours, Zuri." I walked out of the executive suite and headed straight to my office. I did not need a moment to collect myself in the restroom or splash cold water on my face. I had spent the last 12 years collecting myself after every single one of Andre's tantrums. I unlocked my bottom desk drawer and pulled out the thick leather-bound folder Kendra had overnighted to me through a secure courier. Inside that folder was the culmination of every financial lie, every secret transaction, and every fraudulent document my husband had ever created. I tucked it under my arm and walked to the private executive elevator. As the glass elevator descended 40 floors through the heart of the Tokyo headquarters, I watched the bustling city outside. Andre really thought he could cross the Pacific Ocean and break me in my own fortress. He had used the money Chloe embezzled from Trey to buy a last-minute ticket, thinking a grand public gesture would force my hand. He fundamentally misunderstood who I was. He thought I was a woman who cared about keeping the peace. I was actually a woman who cared about winning the war. The doors of the elevator chimed and opened into the massive, pristine marble lobby of our global headquarters. The space was usually a sanctuary of quiet Japanese corporate efficiency, but right now it felt like a circus. Standing in the center of the immaculate floor was Andre. He looked absolutely terrible. I was wearing the same clothes he had on in Aspen, his designer jacket wrinkled and stained with what looked like spilled coffee. Beside him was a local freelance camera operator. He had clearly hired off the street, shoving a professional lighting rig and a smartphone directly into the faces of our highly trained security personnel. Andre was playing his role to the hilt. He was pacing back and forth, running a hand over his face, looking directly into the camera lens and projecting a false, deep sorrow. He was sweating, visibly shaking with the adrenaline of his own performance. "I just want my daughter back!" he shouted, his voice echoing off the high marble walls. "I flew across the world because my wife lost her mind and stole my child. She locked me out of my home, she froze my bank accounts, and she ran away to Asia because she cares more about a corporate paycheck than her own family. I am standing here right now, demanding answers. Zuri, if you are watching this, come down here and face me. Tell the world why you abandoned your husband in the snow." Several junior executives and administrative staff were hovering near the security turnstiles, watching the spectacle with wide eyes. Andre thrives on an audience. He feeds on attention. He thought that by bringing a camera, he was putting me on trial. I stepped out of the elevator bay, and the sharp click of my designer heels echoed across the silent floor. The crowd parted for me instantly. The security guards who had been trying to gently corral him immediately stood at attention as I approached, making a clear path. Andre turned and saw me. For a split second, the mask slipped. His eyes widened, and I saw the very real, terrified realization that I was not shrinking away. I was not hiding my face behind a briefcase. I was walking directly into his spotlight. But he quickly recovered, remembering the live stream was capturing his every move. "There she is!" Andre yelled, pointing a shaking finger at me. He signaled the camera operator to follow him as he marched toward me. "Look at her, dressed in her expensive suits while she leaves her family to freeze. Zuri, what do you have to say for yourself? Tell these people why you kidnapped my little girl. Tell them why you destroyed our black family for a promotion." He shoved the phone dangerously close to my face, hoping I would flinch, hoping I would swat at the camera so he could capture an image of the angry, aggressive black woman he had been describing online. He wanted me to lose my temper so he could play the calm, rational victim. I did not flinch. I stood perfectly still, projecting absolute, impenetrable authority. I looked directly into the camera lens and then shifted my gaze to the pathetic, sweating man standing in front of me. I could smell the stale airplane air and the desperation radiating off his skin. "Andre," I said, my voice perfectly modulated, carrying clearly through the massive lobby without ever needing to shout. "You flew 6,000 miles on stolen money just to stand in my building and beg for my attention. It is a long way to travel just to prove to the world that you are entirely incapable of taking care of yourself." His jaw dropped. He had expected me to be frantic, to beg the camera to stop rolling, to usher him into a private room to save my pride. He did not expect me to lean into the broadcast. "I am not hiding, Andre." I continued, taking a slow, deliberate step toward him, forcing him to step backward to maintain his personal space. "I am standing right here. You brought an audience. You wanted a stage. You wanted the entire world to look at our marriage and decide who is at fault. So let us give them exactly what they tuned in for. Let us talk about our family values." He hesitated, glancing nervously at the camera. He had not prepared a script for a wife who fought back on camera. He tried to pivot back to his rehearsed talking points. "You stole my daughter," he stammered, his voice losing its forceful edge. "You took Kayla across international borders without my permission. You are trying to emasculate me because you do not respect the black man as the head of the household. I extracted my daughter from a public hotel lobby in Colorado after you abandoned her to scream at your ex-wife over a fraudulent hotel bill." I corrected, my voice ringing with absolute clarity. "The Aspen police have the security footage. You left a 13-year-old girl sitting alone on her backpack while you fought with Chantel about who was going to pay the $15,000 tab you racked up on my credit card. I did not steal my child, Andre. I rescued her from your negligence. And as for respect, respect is earned, not financed." The camera operator shifted the lens slightly, clearly captivated by the drama unfolding. Andre's face flushed a deep, furious red. He realized he was losing control of the narrative in real time. He tried to interrupt me, but I did not stop. "You told the internet that I ran away for a corporate paycheck," I said, stepping even closer. "You told them I was a bitter runaway mother. But you forgot to mention that the paycheck you despise so much is the only reason you have a roof over your head. You forgot to mention that my income funds, your failing business ventures, your luxury cars, and the expensive vacations you plan with other women. That is a lie, he shouted, stepping forward, trying to physically intimidate me with his height. You are trying to spin this because you got caught. You shut off the bank accounts to punish me. You locked me out of the house. You are a bitter, controlling woman who uses money to abuse people. I held up my hand, silencing him with a simple, fluid gesture. I did not lock you out of anything, Andre. I simply stopped paying for your life. And it turns out when you subtract my money from your existence, you are left with absolutely nothing. You are a grown man standing in a foreign country crying to the internet because your wife finally stopped paying your allowance. I could feel the eyes of my colleagues watching from the perimeter of the lobby. I could feel the invisible gaze of thousands of strangers watching this live stream across the globe. Andre was panting heavily, desperate to regain the upper hand. He reached out as if to grab my arm to force me to stop talking, but the security guards instantly stepped forward. I waved them back. I did not need physical protection from a man who was already crumbling. Instead, I raised the thick leather-bound folder I had brought down from my office. I held it between us like a shield and a weapon perfectly positioned for the camera to capture it. You want to talk to the internet about financial abuse? I asked, my tone dropping to a lethal whisper. You want to talk about who really destroyed our family? You want to stand here and demand accountability on a live global broadcast? I unclasped the folder. He had no idea what was inside it, but the look of sheer terror in his eyes told me he knew his time was officially up. I stepped right up to the freelance camera operator. I held the heavy leather folder open so the bright overhead lights of the corporate lobby illuminated the crisp white pages inside. Zoom in on this, I instructed the cameraman, keeping my voice perfectly steady. The young man, intimidated by my absolute authority, instinctively obeyed. He pushed the smartphone lens right up to the top document. Andre lunged forward, trying to block the camera, but my security team instantly stepped between us. They formed an impenetrable wall of dark suits, isolating my husband completely. What you are all looking at right now is a certified forensic financial audit, I announced, speaking directly to the thousands of strangers watching the live broadcast. For the last 5 years, my husband has been playing the role of a highly successful entrepreneur online. He loves to post about his grind, his investments, and his role as a provider. But let us look at the actual ledgers. I flipped to the first tab in the folder, holding the bank statements up for the world to see. Here are the routing numbers showing exactly where my corporate salary went, I said, making sure every syllable rang with crystal clarity. Every single Friday for the past 3 years, Andre transferred $4,000 of my hard-earned money into a hidden offshore account. And where did that money go? I flipped the page, revealing the next set of highlighted transactions. It went to Chantel, his ex-wife, I stated. I just paid off a $70,000 car loan for a woman who hates me. I funded her designer winter wardrobe, her luxury vacations, and her monthly rent. He did not build a blended family. He built a parasitic financial ecosystem using my paycheck. That is fake, Andre screamed from behind the wall of security guards. His voice was shrill and cracking with panic. She printed fake documents. Do not listen to her. I did not even look at him. I kept my eyes locked on the camera lens. But financial abuse is just money. I continued, turning to the next section of the folder. Let us talk about family values. Let us talk about the black fatherhood he was just crying about on this very stream. I pulled out the official police report from the Aspen Police Department and held it up. 2 weeks ago, my husband took our 13-year-old daughter on a luxury ski trip using my business credit cards, I explained. When his fake wealth ran out and the resort locked his luggage away because he could not pay the $15,000 bill, he panicked. He abandoned our child in a crowded lobby. He left a minor completely unsupervised while he and his ex-wife went into a back office to scream at the hotel manager and assault the staff. I paused, letting the absolute horror of that truth sink into the digital audience. I had to hire a private executive security team from Japan to safely extract my daughter from that mountain. I said, my voice dropping to a fierce, protective register. I had to fly her across the world to protect her from his gross negligence. I did not kidnap my child. I saved her from a man who uses his own daughter as a prop for his social media image. I finally turned to look at Andre. He was a shell of a man. He was sweating profusely, his eyes darting frantically around the marble lobby. He could see the live stream comments scrolling rapidly on the camera operator's monitor. The internet is a ruthless place. The exact same people who had been offering him deep sympathy just 5 minutes ago were now completely destroying him. The tide of public opinion had turned in an instant. They were calling him a fraud, a thief, and a deadbeat. His entire carefully curated reputation was burning to the ground in real time. "You wanted a public audience to shame me into taking you back," I said, taking one final step toward him. "You thought you could weaponize the stereotype of the bitter, angry career woman to hide the fact that you are nothing but a financial parasite. You are a fraud, Andre. You are a man who uses women as stepping stones and shields. But I am not your safety net anymore, and I will never let you use my daughter to validate your fragile ego again." I closed the leather folder with a sharp, definitive snap. The sound echoed through the massive lobby, signaling the absolute end of our marriage. I turned to the head of my corporate security team and offered a polite professional nod. "No, this man is no longer welcome on this property. Please escort him out of the building." The guards, highly trained and impeccably polite, took Andre by the arms. He tried to resist planting his feet on the marble floor and shouting that I would pay for this, but he looked incredibly pathetic. He was physically and emotionally entirely outmatched. The camera operator backed away, realizing the show was over, but he kept his smartphone raised, recording every single second of the humiliation. Andre was dragged backward across the pristine floor, his designer shoes squeaking against the stone. He was screaming my name, begging me to stop them, pleading for a chance to explain. I simply turned my back to him and walked toward the private executive elevators. I did not look back as he was shoved through the heavy revolving glass doors and ejected directly onto the busy, rainy streets of Tokyo. Outside the corporate headquarters, the cold Japanese rain was falling in thick, heavy sheets. Andre stumbled onto the wet pavement, completely disoriented. The freelance camera operator stepped out behind him, lowered his smartphone, and immediately demanded his payment for the live stream services. When Andre admitted he had absolutely no money, the camera operator cursed at him in Japanese, spat on the ground near his shoes, and walked away, leaving him entirely alone. Andre stood on the sidewalk, shivering in his thin designer jacket. He had no luggage. He had no hotel reservation. He had no access to any bank accounts. He was a broken man stranded in a foreign country with nothing but the clothes on his back. Then his phone began to ring. He pulled it out of his pocket, his hands shaking so violently he almost dropped the device. The caller ID displayed an international number from Atlanta. He swiped the green button and brought the phone to his ear, desperately hoping it was Chloe calling to wire him more stolen money so he could buy a ticket home. "Hello," he gasped, his teeth chattering from the cold rain. "Hello," Andre said, a sharp, confident woman's voice. It was not Chloe. It was Kendra, my ruthless family law attorney. "Kendra," he stammered, wiping the rain from his eyes. "You have to tell Zuri to stop this. I will sign the divorce papers. I will give her full custody. Just tell her to buy me a flight back to Atlanta. I am freezing out here." "I do not negotiate with terrorists," Kendra replied, her voice dripping with lethal satisfaction. "I am just calling to give you a professional courtesy heads up. You see, when I filed the divorce petition and the custody orders, I also had a legal obligation to report any financial discrepancies I discovered during the audit of your shared assets." "What are you talking about?" Andre asked, a new wave of terror washing over him. "I am talking about the joint tax returns you and Chloe filed for the last 3 years, Kendra said. "You two thought you were so clever forging Zuri's signature to hide the money Chloe was embezzling from Trey's business. You used those fake returns to secure fraudulent business loans." Andre stopped breathing entirely. The bustling noise of the Tokyo traffic seemed to fade into a dull, roaring sound in his ears. "I submitted a comprehensive fraud report to the Internal Revenue Service yesterday morning." Kendra continued, her tone completely merciless. "Federal agents just raided Trey's house in Atlanta. They seized all of Chloe's electronics and froze every single bank account tied to her name. The IRS Criminal Investigation Division has officially issued a federal warrant for your arrest." No, Andre whispered, falling back against the wet concrete wall of the corporate building. No, please, you cannot do this. Enjoy the rain, Andre Kendra said. Because the absolute second you touch American soil, federal marshals will be waiting at the arrival gate to take you into custody. Have a safe flight. The line went dead. Andre lowered the phone, staring blankly at the dark screen. He slid slowly down the wet concrete wall until he was sitting on the pavement, the cold Tokyo rain soaking right through to his bones. He had demanded I step aside so he could lead the family. Now he was going to federal prison and I had not even broken a sweat. While Andre was shivering in a Tokyo holding cell, waiting for his deportation processing, I shifted my attention back to the city of Atlanta. The digital destruction of my husband was deeply satisfying, but it was only half the battle. Chloe was the architect of the massive social media smear campaign that had attempted to ruin my corporate reputation. She was the one who fed Andre the perfect buzzwords to paint me as an angry, bitter black woman who abandoned her family. She thought she was entirely untouchable, sitting safely in her luxury mansion, an ocean away from the chaos she had orchestrated. She was completely wrong. Tonight was the absolute pinnacle of Chloe's social calendar. She was attending the annual Atlanta Community Empowerment Gala, a high society charity event that drew the wealthiest and most influential people in the city. Chloe had purchased a platinum VIP table using the exact business accounts she was secretly embezzling from my brother-in-law Trey. She was wearing a custom designer gown that cost more than her husband made in a month, and she was playing the role of the ultimate philanthropic savior. I had already sent Trey the comprehensive forensic financial audit exposing her theft. I had provided him with bank routing numbers, fake invoice copies, and direct traces to her parents' accounts in Florida. But Trey was a man who profoundly preferred a comfortable lie over an uncomfortable truth. Chloe had somehow convinced him that my email was just a malicious fabrication created by a runaway wife. She had cried her signature white tears, claiming I was trying to tear their beautiful marriage apart out of pure jealousy because my own marriage had failed. Trey, being the eternal enabler, had chosen to believe her over the irrefutable mathematical evidence. He needed a public awakening if he was going to let his wife steal from him and actively participate in the public character assassination of the woman who had funded his entire life. Then he was going to have to face the consequences in front of everyone he knew. I sat at the heavy oak desk in my Tokyo penthouse. It was early morning in Japan, but it was prime-time evening in Atlanta. I had a massive flat-screen monitor set up on my desk, displaying a crystal-clear high-definition live feed of the gala ballroom. The event organizers had set up a secure broadcasting link for remote donors, and my corporate logistics network made accessing that feed incredibly easy. I watched the camera pan across the opulent ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden glow over the tables adorned with towering floral arrangements. Waiters in crisp white tuxedos circulated with silver trays of champagne. I spotted Trey sitting at their VIP table in his tailored suit, looking up toward the main stage with absolute adoration. He had no idea. His landscaping business was functionally bankrupt because the woman he was smiling at had drained his operating accounts to pay off her parents' bad debts. Then Chloe walked onto the stage. She tapped the microphone and looked out over the ballroom of Atlanta's elite. She started giving a sickeningly sweet speech about family values and the critical importance of sticking together during times of unexpected crisis. She did not use my name, but every single word she spoke was a calculated, highly rehearsed jab at me. She talked about the heartbreak of seeing modern families torn apart by corporate greed and selfish ambition. She talked about how money could never replace a mother's love, and how she and Trey were doing absolutely everything they could to support their poor brother Andre, who had been so cruelly abandoned in his darkest hour. She even managed to drop in a few poorly utilized phrases of African American vernacular English, trying to sound culturally connected, while actively tearing down a black woman to a room full of wealthy donors. I watched her pause perfectly to wipe a single performative tear from her cheek. The crowd was eating it up. They were looking at her like she was a saint, a beautiful, generous woman, holding a broken family together with nothing but her pure heart and her deep commitment to family values. She was milking the social media campaign she had created using my supposed cruelty as the foundation for her own social elevation. The gala featured a segment dedicated to international donors. Chloe had set up an enormous video conference screen behind the podium to showcase wealthy benefactors calling in from around the globe to support her featured charity. What Chloe did not know was that the charity she was passionately promoting on stage was actually a sophisticated shell company she had created to funnel Trey's landscaping money directly to her bankrupt parents in Florida. She was using this high society event to legitimize a fraudulent organization so she could continue stealing from her husband without raising any red flags with the IRS. And what she definitely did not know was that the vice president of global logistics for one of the largest shipping firms on the planet, knew exactly how to hijack a video feed. I had authorized a legitimate $10,000 donation to the Gala's overarching community foundation 3 days ago. That donation secured my official title as a surprise platinum donor. It also secured me 3 uninterrupted minutes on that massive digital screen behind the podium. I had coordinated seamlessly with the event's audiovisual team, under the guise of my corporate title, providing them with a secure high-resolution broadcast link directly from my Tokyo office. The audiovisual technicians were thrilled to have an international corporate executive participating in their local event. They had no idea they were loading a Trojan horse directly into the main frame of Chloe's perfect evening. I watched Chloe finish her tearful monologue about the vital importance of transparency and honesty in family relationships. The sheer hypocrisy of her words was astounding, but I maintained my perfect composure. I adjusted the lapels of my sharp crimson suit and looked directly into the professional broadcast camera I had set up on my desk. Chloe smiled bravely at the audience and announced that they had a very special surprise guest calling in from overseas to present the next major donation. She gestured gracefully toward the enormous screen behind her, completely unaware that she was pointing a loaded weapon directly at her own carefully constructed facade. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly. The low murmur of the wealthy crowd quieted down as they turned their attention to the stage. The massive digital screen flickered to life. I did not appear in a soft, glowing, charitable filter. I was sitting at my desk, projecting absolute unyielding authority. The brilliant neon skyline of Tokyo was clearly visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind me, a vast, undeniable visual representation of my power and my position. I was not the broken runaway wife she had described to the internet. I was a global executive operating at the absolute peak of my career. The audience politely applauded, waiting for the wealthy international donor to speak. Chloe turned around to look at the screen to see which corporate sponsor had joined the broadcast. Her polite philanthropic smile instantly shattered. The color drained from her face so incredibly fast, she looked like all the blood in her body had suddenly evaporated. She gripped the edges of the wooden podium, her knuckles turning stark white as her eyes widened in pure unadulterated terror. Down in the audience, Trey dropped his champagne glass. I watched through the live feed as the delicate crystal shattered against the ballroom floor, splashing expensive liquor across the shoes of the people sitting next to him. He stared at the massive screen, his mouth slightly open, completely paralyzed by the sudden appearance of the woman he had allowed his wife to publicly destroy. I looked directly into the camera lens, bridging the thousands of miles between my Tokyo penthouse and that Atlanta ballroom. I had the floor. I had the audience. I had the exact financial receipts required to burn Chloe's entire world to the ground. She wanted to talk about transparency and honesty in front of the city's elite. I was about to give her exactly what she asked for. Good evening, Atlanta. My voice echoed through the massive ballroom speakers, ringing with absolute crystal-clear authority. I sat perfectly still in my tailored crimson suit, gazing directly into the broadcast camera on my Tokyo desk. Behind me, the brilliant neon skyline of Japan stretched out for miles, providing an undeniable visual testament to my power. I was not the broken, bitter runaway wife Chloe had just described to that room full of wealthy donors. I was a corporate executive operating at the absolute pinnacle of her career, and I had hijacked their entire evening. Down in the audience, the low murmur of conversation instantly ceased. Hundreds of faces turned toward the 20-foot digital screen behind the podium. I watched through my live feed as Chloe froze, completely paralyzed. The color had drained from her face, leaving her looking entirely ghostly under the bright stage lights. She gripped the edges of the wooden podium so tightly her knuckles turned white. I want to thank the organizers of the annual Atlanta Community Empowerment Gala for allowing me to join you tonight from across the globe. I continued, my tone warm, but layered with a sharp, dangerous edge. As the vice president of global logistics for an international firm, I understand the deep importance of transparency. When you are moving millions of dollars in assets, you have to know exactly where every single cent is going. That is why I am so incredibly proud to announce my $10,000 platinum donation to tonight's overarching community foundation. A polite wave of applause rippled through the ballroom. The wealthy philanthropists clapped their hands, completely unaware of the trap that had just been sprung. Chloe tried to force a smile, but her lips merely twitched. She shot a desperate, panicked look toward the audiovisual booth in the back of the room, silently begging them to cut the feed. But she was entirely powerless. I had routed the broadcast through a secure, encrypted corporate server. Nobody in that room could shut me off until I was finished. As I listened to Chloe speak so passionately about family values and honesty, just moments ago I felt inspired, I said, allowing a slow, calculated smile to spread across my face. She reminded me that we must always hold our loved ones accountable. You see, Chloe handles the bookkeeping for my brother-in-law Trey and his landscaping business. She recently set up a specialized charity initiative, and she asked for our family to support it. But because my corporate background requires me to verify all financial structures, I decided to run a standard forensic audit on this charitable organization before presenting my donation tonight. I pressed a button on my keyboard. The massive screen behind Chloe split perfectly in half. On the left side, my face remained calm and authoritative. On the right side, high-resolution images of bank statements, routing numbers, and incorporation documents flashed into view for the entire ballroom to see. I watched Trey down in the VIP section. He was staring up at the screen, the shattered remains of his champagne glass pooling around his expensive leather shoes. His mouth was slightly open. What I discovered is a masterclass in modern philanthropy. I announced, my voice dropping into a lethal, precise cadence. The charity my sister-in-law is standing on stage promoting right now is actually a registered shell company. If you look at the documents on the screen, you will see 3 vendor accounts listed as major recipients of the funds. They sound like legitimate landscaping suppliers, but they are ghost accounts. The ballroom was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpeted floor. The socialites and corporate executives were squinting at the screen, reading the highlighted bank routing numbers. Every single Friday for the past year, Chloe has authorized fraudulent payments from her husband's landscaping business to these ghost vendors, I stated, outlining the exact mechanism of her theft. The money does not go to community empowerment. It does not go to disadvantaged youth. The funds are routed through a holding account and deposited directly into the personal bank accounts of Chloe's parents in Florida to quietly pay off their recent bankruptcy. She has systematically embezzled $82,000 from a hardworking black man who trusted her completely. Chloe let out a strangled gasp. She leaned into the microphone, her voice trembling and shrill. "Turn it off," she screamed, waving her hands frantically at the technicians in the back. "Turn the screen off right now. She is lying. This is a targeted cyber attack. She is a bitter, angry woman trying to destroy my family." I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The truth is always louder than a lie. "Trey," I said, speaking directly to my brother-in-law through the camera lens, "I sent the complete 60-page forensic audit to your email 30 minutes ago. I bailed your company out 3 years ago with a $50,000 loan to protect our family name. I kept quiet while your wife paraded around in designer gowns bought with stolen money. But when she decided to orchestrate a viral social media campaign painting me as a negligent mother to cover her own financial crimes, she crossed a line I do not forgive. Read the audit, Trey. Look at the signatures. Your wife is a thief, hiding behind the language of social justice." The camera angle in the ballroom captured Trey standing up. He ignored the spilled champagne soaking into his trousers. He looked at the massive screen, digesting the undeniable mathematical proof of his wife's betrayal. Then he looked up at Chloe, who was standing at the podium weeping genuine terrified tears. Her performative white savior complex had been entirely stripped away, leaving nothing but a desperate fraud exposed in front of the city's most powerful people. Trey, please," Chloe sobbed, abandoning the microphone and stumbling to the edge of the stage. She reached her hands out toward him, playing the ultimate victim. "It is not what it looks like. My parents were going to lose their house. I was going to pay you back. She hacked our accounts, Trey, you have to believe me." Trey stared at her. For years he had allowed her to disrespect me. He had turned a blind eye to her condescension because she made him feel validated. He had enabled his brother Andre's toxic behavior and stood by while they both attacked my character. But looking at the undeniable proof that his own wife had financially ruined him to save her bankrupt parents, the illusion finally shattered. "Do not touch me!" Trey yelled, his voice booming through the silent ballroom. He stepped backward, refusing to let her reach him. "You stole from me. You stole from my business to pay for your family's mistakes, and then you smiled in my face. We are done, Chloe. I want a divorce. I am calling my lawyer the second I walk out of these doors." He turned around and marched toward the exit, leaving his designer jacket on the back of his chair. He did not look back. The ballroom instantly erupted into chaotic whispers. The wealthy donors, the socialites, the corporate sponsors. They were all pulling out their phones, recording the spectacular collapse of Chloe's high society facade. The event organizers hurried onto the stage, trying to usher a hysterical, hyperventilating Chloe toward the backstage exit to prevent any further disruption. She was weeping uncontrollably, her mascara running down her face, her entire social standing evaporating in real time. She valued her reputation in these elite circles more than oxygen, and I had just suffocated her on live television. I smiled a tight, satisfied smile. I pressed a single key on my laptop, terminating the secure connection. The massive screen in Atlanta went entirely black. I sat back in my leather chair in the quiet sanctuary of my Tokyo penthouse. The digital demolition was completely successful. I had systematically dismantled the two people who had conspired to ruin my life, and I had done it without ever raising my voice. Andre was outside in the freezing Japanese rain, waiting for federal marshals to drag him to prison. Chloe was socially exiled and facing severe embezzlement charges in Atlanta. I had surgically removed the cancerous elements from my life and protected my daughter in the process. I closed my laptop and let out a long, slow breath. I stood up and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the sprawling neon landscape of my new city. I was ready to pour myself a glass of Yamazaki whiskey and finally celebrate my absolute freedom. But before I could even turn toward the kitchen, my secure private smartphone chimed. It was not a text message or a phone call. It was a video file sent from an unregistered number. I picked up the device and tapped the screen. The video buffered for a second before revealing the face of my husband's ex-wife. Chantel looked absolutely unrecognizable. The arrogant, demanding woman who had sent me links to $2,000 ski jackets was completely gone. She was sitting in what looked like the fluorescent-lit waiting area of a cheap airport motel. Her hair was a messy, tangled knot, and she was wearing a cheap, oversized hoodie. Her face was puffy and deeply red from intense crying. "Zuri," Chantel said, her voice cracking pathetically as she stared into her front-facing camera. "I know you hate me. I know you have every right to ignore this, but I do not have anyone else to call." She wiped her nose with the sleeve of her hoodie, her hands shaking violently. "Andre completely lost his mind after the hotel kicked us out," she sobbed. "When he realized his credit cards were dead and the police would not help him, he absolutely snapped. He stole my rental car keys while I was distracted. He drove to a pawn shop in Denver and sold his custom watch and my designer luggage just to get cash. He emptied out the last $400 I had in my emergency checking account." She paused, choking back a heavy, terrified sob. "He left me stranded at a motel near the airport, Zuri. He bought a standby ticket to Japan. He told me that the IRS had frozen all his other accounts and that he had nothing left to lose. He had this crazy look in his eyes, Zuri. He said that if he cannot have you backing him up, nobody will ever have you. He is on his way back to your corporate building right now. Please be careful. He has completely lost his mind." The video abruptly ended, leaving the screen dark. I stood perfectly still in my penthouse, the silence of the room suddenly feeling very heavy. Andre had not just been shivering in the rain waiting for the inevitable. The call from Kendra about the IRS and the federal marshals had pushed him past the point of pathetic desperation and directly into dangerous territory. He had nothing left to protect. His pride, his money, and his freedom were all gone. A man with nothing left to lose is a man who stops caring about consequences. I was not running away. He was coming back to my building. I watched the screen go dark after Chantel sent her frantic video message. The silence in my Tokyo penthouse felt heavy, but I did not feel a single ounce of fear. Andre was coming back to my building. He was a man backed into a corner with his finances frozen, his pride shattered, and federal warrants waiting for him back home. He thought he could cross the ocean again and force me into submission through sheer intimidation. I thought that if he could just get to me physically, he could terrorize me into fixing the absolute disaster he had made of his own life. He genuinely believed that his aggression could override my boundaries. But Andre forgot who he was dealing with. He forgot that I am the vice president of global logistics. I do not panic when a rogue variable enters my supply chain. I calculate its trajectory, I anticipate its arrival, and I neutralize the threat before it ever breaches my perimeter. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the sprawling neon grid of Tokyo. I knew exactly how much time I had. A direct flight from Denver to Tokyo takes roughly 12 hours, factoring in the time he spent pawning Chantel's belongings and navigating standby flights. I had more than enough of a head start to prepare his welcoming committee. I picked up my secure smartphone and dialed Valerie, my regional president. I explained the situation cleanly and professionally, without a hint of hysteria. I told her that a hostile individual with active federal warrants was en route to our corporate headquarters. Valerie did not hesitate. She immediately granted me full authorization to utilize the highest tier of our corporate security infrastructure. Next, I called Kendra back in Atlanta. My brilliant attorney had already been in contact with the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Division regarding the fraudulent tax returns Andre and Chloe had filed. Because Andre had fled the country after committing federal wire fraud, his case had been escalated to the highest federal authorities. Kendra provided me with the direct contact information for the United States Federal Marshals stationed at the embassy in Tokyo. I made the call immediately. I provided them with Andre's exact flight details, his physical description, and his probable destination. I informed them that he had openly threatened my safety and was actively evading federal tax fraud charges. The marshals coordinated seamlessly with the local Tokyo Metropolitan Police. Within 2 hours, a joint task force had quietly established an impenetrable perimeter around my corporate building. I did not run. I did not hide in a hotel or flee the city to avoid him. I went downstairs to the executive security control room, located deep within the reinforced sub-basement of our headquarters. I sat in a high-backed leather chair surrounded by dozens of high-definition surveillance monitors. The chief of security, a stoic and highly efficient Japanese man named Kenji, stood beside me. We watched the live feeds of the building exterior, the lobby, the delivery bays, and the executive elevators. I had instructed the security team to let Andre get just far enough inside to definitively prove his malicious intent, but not far enough to pose a physical danger to any of my staff. We were going to catch him in a perfectly designed bottleneck. The hours ticked by steadily. I drank black coffee and reviewed shipping manifests on my tablet, refusing to let my husband's psychotic breakdown interrupt my workflow. I thought about how predictable he was. Andre operated purely on entitlement and rage. He believed that the rules simply did not apply to him. He believed that because he was a man, he was inherently owed access to my space, my money, and my life. He was about to learn a very hard lesson about boundaries and international law. At exactly 4 in the morning, Tokyo time, one of the exterior surveillance monitors flickered with movement. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the console. It was him. Andre looked like a walking nightmare. He was drenched from a sudden downpour, his clothes completely soaked and clinging to his frame. He was shivering aggressively, moving with a frantic, jittery energy. I did not walk through the main revolving doors, because he knew the lobby guards would instantly recognize him from his humiliating ejection the previous day. Instead, he crept around the side of the massive glass structure, heading for the automated delivery bays. He waited in the shadows near the loading dock until a late-night catering delivery truck pulled up to the security gate. When the gate rolled open, Andre sprinted silently behind the large vehicle, using it as a shield to bypass the exterior perimeter. He slipped through a side service door just as it was swinging shut. I watched him on the monitors, moving through the sterile white corridors of the service level. He was panting, his chest heaving, his eyes darting back and forth. He looked feral. He genuinely thought he was pulling off a brilliant infiltration. He thought he was outsmarting a billion-dollar global corporation. He had no idea that we were tracking his every single footstep, tracking his thermal signature, and guiding him exactly where we wanted him to go. "Let him proceed to service elevator B," I instructed the security chief. Kenji nodded and spoke quietly into his radio headset. The guards stationed in the hallways deliberately stepped back out of sight, allowing Andre to pass unobstructed. Andre found the service elevator and smashed his fist against the call button. When the doors opened, he scrambled inside and hit the button for the top executive floor. He probably envisioned himself bursting into my office, demanding my submission, terrifying me into handing over my wealth. He was probably rehearsing the aggressive speech he was going to scream at me to reclaim his fractured pride. The elevator began its ascent. I watched the camera feed from inside the elevator cabin. Andre was pacing in the small space, running his hands nervously over his face, muttering to himself. As the elevator passed the 20th floor, I gave Kenji the signal. "Stop the car and redirect it to the secure holding level," I said smoothly. Kenji typed a command into his terminal. On the monitor, I saw Andre stumble slightly as the elevator abruptly slowed down and shifted its trajectory. The digital display inside the cabin changed, directing him to an isolated, restricted access floor used specifically for high-level security screenings. Andre stared at the display panels, pure confusion washing over his exhausted face. He hit the buttons frantically, trying to force the elevator to take him to the executive suite, but the system was completely locked out. The elevator came to a smooth halt. The heavy metal doors slid open. Andre lunged forward, ready to fight his way out. But he did not step out into a plush-carpeted executive hallway. He did not step out to find me cowering behind a desk. He stepped out into a stark, brightly lit concrete holding bay. Standing in a perfect semicircle waiting for him were 4 armed officers from the Tokyo Metropolitan Police and 2 plainclothes United States Federal Marshals holding official badges. The look on Andre's face was something I will remember for the rest of my life. It was not just fear. It was the absolute total collapse of his entire worldview. His jaw went slack, his shoulders dropped. The arrogant swagger, the aggressive entitlement, the belief that he could simply bully his way through life, all of it evaporated in a single devastating instant. Andre tried to backpedal into the elevator, but the system automatically closed the doors right behind him, trapping him in the concrete bay. "Andre, step forward and keep your hands visible." One of the federal marshals commanded, his voice echoing loudly in the sterile space. "You are under arrest." Andre raised his hands, his entire body trembling violently. "This is a mistake," he stammered, his voice weak and pathetic. "I am just trying to see my wife. My wife works here. She is expecting me." "Your wife is the one who provided us with your flight itinerary," Andre the marshal replied, stepping forward with a pair of heavy steel handcuffs. "You are being detained for criminal trespassing and international harassment under local jurisdiction. Furthermore, you are wanted by the United States government for multiple counts of federal wire fraud and tax evasion. You will be processed by Japanese authorities and then extradited directly back to federal custody in Atlanta." Andre fell to his knees. He did not try to fight. He did not try to argue. The fight was completely beaten out of him. He let the Tokyo police pull his arms behind his back and secure the handcuffs around his wrists. He was crying now, thick, heavy tears of genuine despair. He had played every single card in his hand. He had stolen from his brother, he had abandoned his daughter, he had bankrupted his ex-wife, and he had tried to terrorize me. Now he had absolutely nothing left to play. I sat in the security control room watching the monitors as they hauled my husband away. They dragged him down the hallway, his designer shoes scuffing against the concrete, his head hanging in total defeat. He was escorted out of the building through the loading dock, thrown into the back of a secure police transport vehicle, and driven away into the dark, rainy Tokyo night. I did not feel a single ounce of pity. I did not feel sad for the man I had married. I felt a profound, immense sense of justice. I thanked Kenji and the security team for their flawless execution. I stood up from the leather chair, smoothed my suit jacket, and walked to the elevator. I rode it up to the top floor, stepping out into the quiet luxury of the executive suite. The threat was neutralized. The cargo had been rejected at the border. My logistics operation was a complete, resounding success. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at the city that had become my sanctuary. The sun would be rising soon, bringing a brand new day, a brand new life, and a brand new era of absolute peace. The storm was finally over. The sunrise over Tokyo that morning was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corporate suite and watched the city wake up, bathed in brilliant shades of orange and gold. For the first time in 12 years, my chest was completely clear of the heavy, suffocating anxiety that had defined my marriage. I did not have to check my bank accounts to see what luxury items Andre had secretly purchased. I did not have to brace myself for a phone call from a collection agency. I did not have to prepare a mental shield to deflect the passive-aggressive insults from his family. The cancer had been entirely surgically removed from my life. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and sat down at my desk, ready to officially begin my tenure as Vice President of Global Logistics. I felt lighter than air. The legal and financial dust settling back in the United States was a masterpiece of absolute justice. Over the next few weeks, my attorney Kendra executed the final stages of our strategy with ruthless precision. She was a woman who understood that true accountability requires leaving no stone unturned. The swiftness of the fallout was breathtaking. Andre was extradited back to Atlanta, strapped into the seat of a federal transport plane in handcuffs. There was no grand legal defense. There was no charming his way out of the courtroom. The federal prosecutors had a mountain of irrefutable evidence, including the fraudulent tax returns, the forged signatures, and the bank routing numbers, showing his deliberate financial crimes. Because he had fled the country while under federal investigation, the judge denied his bail immediately. He was remanded to a federal holding facility to await his sentencing. He was looking at a minimum of 10 years in federal prison for wire fraud and tax evasion. The man who had demanded I step aside so he could be the powerful head of the household was now entirely stripped of his freedom, his designer clothes, and his false pride. I was completely financially ruined, and because I had legally severed all of my assets from his name before I left, he had absolutely no access to my wealth to hire a high-priced defense attorney. He had to rely on a public defender. His toxic alliance crumbled the second the money dried up. Chloe, the woman who had orchestrated the vicious social media smear campaign against me, experienced a spectacular high society downfall. Trey had finally woken up from his prolonged state of willful ignorance. Confronted with the 60-page forensic audit that proved his wife was systematically bankrupting his landscaping business, he did not hesitate. He locked her out of their house, canceled her credit cards, and filed for a brutal contested divorce. But the divorce was the least of Chloe's problems. Because the funds she had embezzled from Trey were routed across state lines to pay off her parents in Florida, she was facing severe felony embezzlement charges. The Internal Revenue Service did not stop with Andre. They clawed back the stolen money, seizing her parents' Florida property and forcing them into a very real, very public bankruptcy. Chloe lost everything she valued. She was permanently exiled from the wealthy Atlanta charity circles she had so desperately tried to infiltrate. The women she used to drink champagne with completely shunned her, deleting her number and pretending they had never known her. She was left facing years of legal battles, a furious ex-husband, and absolute social ruin. She had tried to paint me as a disgrace to motherhood, to boost her own fake savior complex, and in return, the universe had stripped her bare. Chantel faced her own harsh reality. The woman who had sent me links to $2,000 ski jackets, demanding I sponsor her luxury lifestyle, was left completely bankrupt and utterly alone. Andre had drained her final emergency bank account to buy his doomed ticket to Japan, leaving her stranded in that cheap airport motel. Without Andre to funnel my money into her bank accounts, she could no longer afford the luxury apartment she was renting in Atlanta. She was swiftly evicted. She had spent years trying to compete with me, trying to prove she was the preferred woman in Andre's life. In the end, she won the prize she fought so hard for. She got a broke, fraudulent man who stole her last dime and left her stranded. She was forced to move back in with her mother and get a minimum wage retail job just to survive. The illusion of her glamorous blended family was completely shattered. While they were drowning in the natural consequences of their own malicious actions, I was thousands of miles away, building an absolute paradise for my daughter and myself. The transition to life in Japan was smoother than I ever could have imagined. I flourished in my new executive role. The board of directors respected my sharp intellect, my unyielding work ethic, and my ability to navigate complex global supply chains with flawless precision. I was no longer shrinking myself to make a fragile man feel powerful. I was expanding into the absolute peak of my potential, and I was highly compensated for my brilliance. But the greatest joy of my new life was watching Kayla thrive. The heavy, anxious energy she used to carry around in Atlanta completely dissolved. When we lived with Andre, she was always walking on eggshells, trying to anticipate his moods, trying to stay out of the crossfire of his arguments with Chantel. Here in Tokyo, she was just allowed to be a teenager. It was a beautiful Saturday afternoon in late spring, and the cherry blossoms were in full glorious bloom. The city was painted in breathtaking shades of pale pink and white. Kayla and I were walking down a vibrant, bustling street in the heart of Shibuya. The air was crisp and sweet, filled with the scent of blooming flowers and fresh street food. Kayla was wearing her new international school uniform, a stylish navy blazer with a pleated skirt. She looked so incredibly happy. Her brown eyes were bright and her posture was confident and relaxed. We stopped at a small, lively vendor stall selling matcha-flavored pastries. I watched with immense pride as my 13-year-old daughter stepped up to the counter. She smiled brightly at the vendor and ordered our food in basic, beautifully pronounced Japanese. The vendor beamed at her, handing over the warm pastries and bowing slightly. Kayla bowed back, thanking him gracefully before turning to hand me my treat. She linked her arm through mine as we continued walking beneath the canopy of falling cherry blossoms. She laughed at a joke a classmate had texted her joy ringing clear and true through the crisp spring air. She had made wonderful friends at her new school, friends from all over the world who valued her intelligence and her kind heart. She was joining art clubs, exploring the city, and discovering who she was, entirely free from the toxic environment her father had tried to force upon her. I looked at her radiant, smiling face, and I knew that every single difficult decision I had made, every silent strategic move was absolutely worth it. I had successfully protected my peace and I had secured her future. I took a bite of the warm, sweet pastry and looked up at the stunning Tokyo skyline. I was profoundly, deeply at peace. The woman who used to cry in her car before pulling into her own driveway was gone forever. I was respected by my peers. I was deeply loved by my daughter, and I was entirely financially and emotionally autonomous. I had fought a silent, brutal war against a man who wanted to drain my spirit, and I had emerged completely victorious. I stood under the falling pink petals, feeling the warm sun on my skin, and I thought about that Thanksgiving dinner. I thought about the sheer, unadulterated disrespect he had thrown in my face, expecting me to simply swallow it and write a check. He told me to divorce him if I didn't like being put last. He thought I would scream, cry, and fight for a seat at my own table. But I didn't argue. I just bought a new table on the other side of the world.